warms up towards the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like a good singer. We cut that bit where I just went straight to the chase.
And a distillery or independent bottler?
Independent bottler.
Ah, you do know your stuff. Okay.
I do quite like PT, I have to say that.
Whisky High Notes, the classical music and whisky podcast you never realised you needed, live from the Three Choirs Festival. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are here and it is Whisky High Notes, and I'm Noel Belshall, the host of this fun little show. And it's a special one, which is kind of on the road, shall we say, at the moment. And we're actually in the grounds of Gloucester Cathedral as part of the Three Choirs Festival. And what a fabulous backdrop.
It's pretty stunning, isn't it?
And thank you so much to my guest, Liz Kenny, a lutenist. And we have the bells to announce you. Thank you so much for joining me, especially for quite an early one, because we had to get this in before you're doing a rehearsal.
It's a great pleasure.
For your concert at the Three Choirs Festival. So really lovely to have you. I'd love to know a bit more about how you got into playing the lutes and your career getting to here.
Entirely by accident, I have to say.
Yeah.
I was a guitar player at school and as a child, a bit off and on, I have to say. But gradually, and I went away and did a degree in English literature, but I always had a sort of itch to scratch with music. So I came to the Royal Academy of Music in 1988 or something to study guitar. And there were lutes and instruments, and people said, you might like to try these, because I was playing sort of Bach and John Dowland, who we're doing today, on the guitar. And gradually, just one thing led to another, and I got sucked in. I had no idea what a lute was. I had no idea it wasn't one instrument. You know, I went from that one instrument, now I've got about 15 at home. So it just, you know, the small steps and not really seeing the path really helped.
Amazing. That's really interesting to hear about. So now, as part of Whisky High Notes, the next thing is I'm going to ask you some short fire questions. So just answer these as you see fit, whatever comes to mind. Are you ready? Peaty or floral?
Floral.
Floral. Whiskey or gin?
Whiskey.
Good. And a distillery or independent bottler?
Independent bottler.
Ah, you do know your stuff. Okay.
I do quite like PT, I have to say. That was a really hard one to start with.
Well, thank you so much. Well, you know, this is a fairly short one, and obviously, as it's linked to the Three Choirs Festival, and you're here as an artist, I was thinking what might be the best way to kind of think about music and link it to whiskey. So, in your case, I kind of went for a concert that's about to happen at the point we're recording, but probably by the time I put it out, it will have happened. But you're doing a concert this afternoon, which is all around Dowland, isn't that right? Do you want to say a little bit more about the composer, first of all? And
so for a lute player, John Dowland he's up there in the rock god pantheon. He died in 1626, so it's the 400th anniversary of that.
Yeah.
So that's very nice for a lute player, because obviously that's where he was at home as, you know, a great solo player and composer, but he also wrote around 82, I think, songs.
Oh wow.
And probably his landmark publication is the Lachrimae for 5 viols and lute, which doesn't often get done, but it does get done quite a bit in anniversary years, so I'm completely thrilled.
So is it just hard to get that kind of group of instruments together and put on performances?
I think so. I mean, it must be said, it's 7 passionate pavans, which are pretty passionate. They're pretty miserable, and they are totally obsessive. They circle round one particular theme, which gets examined, explored, turned upside down. So you have to be really up for the experience.
Yes. Okay. Fascinating. Okay. So with that in mind, and choosing pieces from your program today, I think I went with, or in terms of the whiskies that I've paired, I've changed the order that you sent me the pieces. And I think the first one I chose is actually one which does include voice. And it's a recording possibly of yourself and Mark Padmore, could you tell us a bit more about that piece, and then I'll go on to the...
Indeed.
Yes.
Well, out of loyalty, I should say today we're playing with Ian Bostridge.
Yes.
And actually, and haven't done a recording with Ian yet of this particular piece. But Ian and Mark are really long-standing collaborators of my both extraordinary influences. So Mark and I did this recording about 20 years ago now. And it's an extraordinary song called In Darkness, Let Me Dwell. It's published in Dowland's last songbook, A Pilgrim's Solace, although there are some secular, sacred songs as well. And it's probably one of the most adventurous in the lute song, what we call the lute song repertoire. It's really dark, really gloomy, quite low in the voice. The lute part is an equal partner. There's lots of counterpoint. But it's the only song I know where I stop playing first. And the singer has the last word. Mostly songs go how we expect them on any kind of genre of song, where we just play and then we sing and then we stop. But there's this real sense of an in-breath, and you don't know what's going to happen next. So it's kind of quintessential. Dowland's persona was Mr. Melancholy, Semper Dowlands, Semper Dolens, ever Dowland, ever grieving. For me, the jury's out as to whether that was a performance personality or a real condition. He was pretty dissatisfied most of his life. But he was also extraordinarily successful and got lots of praise and plaudits and ran his own career
he travelled around Europe quite a lot, and it was something to do with his religious faith. He became he was Catholic, and so what was happening in Britain at the time, being Protestant, maybe there was difficulty with that. Then, did he convert later or something?
Well, indeed, and being I mean, he's quite slippery. He never admitted to being Catholic. But it was just, I happened to be hanging around with these priests in Italy and in Rome, of all places, because I was going to study the music of Marenzio, who is the great Roman composer. But he's sailing pretty close to the wind. But the wonderful thing that I think about, probably more than I should, is that as a lute player, you had real access, as close as we are now, perhaps, to the reigning monarch. So if you were a Catholic in the late 16th century, whatever the views of Queen Elizabeth herself, her kind of retinue and staff, Sir Robert Cecil, were really concerned about security. So if there's any doubt about your religious affiliation, you would not be in that job. And that really annoyed Dowland, because he knew he was the best, and he went around telling everybody he was the best. I'm good enough for Germany, I'm good enough for Denmark, I'm good enough for France. But actually, he had a great career in all those places.
Fascinating. Okay, so back to the piece. So of all the pieces you shared with me as to ones to include, I felt, although this obviously is quite deep and quite sad, it was in some ways the lightest in terms of, I suppose, just feeling like two solo lines with the lute and the voice. So I've chosen the lightest of the three whiskies in that sense, or in one sense. So the first whiskey we're going to try is from Lindores Abbey. So Lindores Abbey goes back right to the 12th century in terms of when the abbey itself was put up. But this is a whiskey distillery that's much more recent. So if I get my notes on this as well, so I don't mess this up. So this is their 1494 whiskey. So it's called that because I think it is the Exchequer rolls of the time, it was the first mention of aquavitae, and is in a whiskey being made for the king. So there's an actual mention of a monk there kind of making a whiskey for the king. So the distillery, although more modern, see themselves as a spiritual home of, the founding of Scottish whiskey, which I think is quite fun. So I just thought it's such a lovely whiskey, but it's slightly lighter than the other ones we have, that, I don't know, as I said, with the way that the lines flow, even though the words are quite dark at points and so melancholy, I thought this might be a nice one to pair. So Thanks very much to Lindores Abbey for gifting us this whiskey to take on the road as well. So if you want to reach down for your first glass,
yes,
and I actually bought this in a charity shop yesterday, and it is a 100-year-old celebration of the famous grouse whiskey, so I thought it was quite funny. So
cheers.
Cheers. Yeah. So actually, I like to look at it a little bit before we drink. So I'd say it's an amber colour.
We cut that bit where I just went straight to the chase.
That could be fun. But I think maybe so I would say as it's our first sip of the day, take it slowly. But let's, before we even have a taste, let's have a smell and see what you think of the aroma. So are you picking up any particular notes, any flavours?
It's very subtle.
It is quite subtle. Yeah. On this kind of glass, it's hard to pick out. But for me, I'm getting a bit of kind of like apples and orchard fruits, maybe a little bit of pears and vanilla custard.
Yeah, there's a freshness to it.
Yeah,
and that's very clever because the song is like that. It contrasts a living, dying, living, dying. So it's a lot about the living as well. And this has that that fresh, natural feeling.
All right. So now I would say let's move on to a little taste. There's a lot of depth to it.
There is. It's a gradual.
Yeah.
At least 3-stage. Process.
It gradually builds.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Just warms up towards the end.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like a good singer. Yeah, that's really
that's right. I mean, it definitely still has certain apple and citrus notes, but when you actually taste it, there's a lot more depth and a lot of darkness going on, woody tones and things like that for me. So, it's a good dram. I came across it a few years ago at a whiskey tasting in Soho, where I'm a member of the whiskey club there. I was really
it's great because I'm playing later. I don't have the tiniest sip, but it's still talking.
No, that's
to me
right.
Yes, so it would be easy to drink very slowly.
I mean, I think all these drams might be.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
No. Yes. So that's number one. So then I went on to this is an instrumental piece, and you selected a recording just to give a bit of, should we say, different colour to the playlist we'll share with everyone. A recording by Julian Bream of this, so on guitar versus lute. But tell us about this piece that's also going to be in the programme later. Yes,
so we'll do a slightly different arrangement later. Yeah. But this is the King of Denmark's Galliard.
Yes.
So when Dowland did go and play in Denmark, there's a wonderful book called Music and Silence by Rose Tremaine that talks about him playing at the bottom of a shaft, which we like to think of with in darkness. I'm right at the bottom, but the acoustics would have been amazing for carrying. So they're really interested in echoes going around corners and things. So this is a dance for the King of Denmark, and comparatively, I mean, it's still in this rather gentle sound world, but it's comparatively sort of in your face and a bit raucous. Yeah, and it's in two different tonalities at the same time, which for its time again is very adventurous. Yeah. There's a lot of D major going on, and then there's a lot of F major.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And some people say it's because Christian IV liked to drink quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
Not in the civilized way that we're doing. So it might be stumbling from one key to another and stumbling back again. I don't know. Listeners can decide. But played by Julian Bream, who's a complete childhood hero of mine. I used to go to his concerts when I played guitar. Yeah. You know, when I was sort of 10, 11, 12, and you know, would go and ask for an autograph, and he did so much for the lute, as well as he commissioned composers to write for the guitar. But at the other end, he was sort of going to the British Library and discovering all these dusty old manuscripts, getting them out, and then injecting his performance charisma to them. So this is just such a joyful recording.
So this recording will have really got to an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
well, that's amazing. Okay, so for this one, I have like the world's tiniest bottle. Because so this is actually from Ludlow Whiskey Distillery.
Oh, right.
So Ludlow Gin, you might be aware of as well. I think they set up Sean Ward in I think 2018. But all that time, they've also been looking at creating whiskey at the same time, and that's been running for a few years. And I think they have quite a specialised small still that is wood-fired from Germany, which is quite unusual apparently. But this is a particularly special one that they brought out, I think it was either late last year or this year, which is the Ludlow Herefordshire Royal Cider Cask. So I will show the bottle. Now it does appear in larger bottles as well, but Sean only had the small bottles left. But I really wanted to feature it because it's unusual for a whiskey to be finished in cider casks, but this is a partnership actually with Hereford Cathedral as well. So there's a kind of lovely link to the Three Choirs Festival again, which is at Gloucester, but also Hereford and Worcester, and travels between those three cities. So I thought this partnership idea, and that's Tom Oliver's Royal Cider, that the whiskey is finished in after it's been in bourbon and Speyside barrels for quite a time. But I think we'll sense that a little bit. But yeah, I thought that this had a little bit of an extra punch that goes with that kind of guitar punch in terms of how Julian Green is playing the music. So if you want to now go to your middle, you've got the right one. You've got the.
I have got the.
You have got the.
Yeah.
Right. So this is I feel like this is an even lighter one. In fact, it almost looks like it could be a cider. And then I didn't really talk about it because you couldn't really see on the other one, but sometimes I look at what's called the legs as well. I don't know if you've ever done that with whiskey. So you kind of look to see how much it sticks on the glass and how long it takes to go down. Because sometimes that might mean it has a kind of a finish that stays in your mouth more or coats the side.
Wow, I'm learning.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly.
A lot. This is wonderful. Yeah.
But yes, next, aroma. And yeah.
Yeah, I would say more declamatory.
Yes. I mean, I still think there are apples again.
Yeah, not too much.
Or apple crumble, a little bit.
It declares itself.
Yeah. But then I'm swayed with the idea, am I smelling a bit of vinegar, or is it, a little bit of cider in there? But that's probably just my mind. Should we try a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in some ways quite smooth.
Yeah, smooth is the word I was thinking. So the aroma feels like it would be more ta-da.
Yeah.
And then actually it is.
Yeah, it mellows out. But there's a little bit of pepperiness at the end for me. And again, you can kind of feel those kind of apple crumble notes. Yeah. But it does come across quite smoothly, and that's probably because we also had another dram as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pleased to say I'm getting less vinegar. I had one of those apple cider vinegar health crazes about 10 years ago, and after about a year of that I couldn't go near the stuff again.
Yeah. No.
So this for me is
well I think finishing it, I was going to say, I think finishing it in the cider just adds an extra note, but actually it comes across quite mellowly and fits in really well.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's one more piece left that you selected, and I think you were talking about it a bit earlier. Is it Lachrimae?
Yeah.
And you chose one of the movements of this whole cycle that Dowland wrote. So which one was the one that you chose, and tell us a bit more about that? Yeah.
So of the 7 pavans or slow dances, this is the penultimate.
Okay.
It's called Lachrimae Amantis, so the tears of lover.
Okay.
And the idea was that tears aren't all the same thing, so it's not all melancholy. I hate to, you're the expert, but I hate to say it's a bit like these, that the subtle differences are what makes create the pleasure.
Yes.
That it's not just, now I'm sad. And so the tears of lovers they're quite strange. There are some real note clusters, which, because it's viols who sustain, and I never sustain. I play all the parts, but you can't always hear that.
Yeah.
And so for me, and I try and put myself in that quite monster ego Dowland place where I'm the quietest thing of all, but I like to imagine the viols as existing in my head and executing my ideas and sustaining these amazing chords. And so, the Tears of Lovers, they're beautiful, they're painful, they're kind of ecstatic towards the end as well. And it goes into, some quite unknown harmonic places. So you don't get the feeling of a tear of sadness. You get this kind of outpouring of passion.
Yeah, really. No, I mean, I thought it was incredibly complex music, the way it was shifting as it went along, and almost like, feeling like it was modulating in different spaces and you didn't quite know where the key was going or stuff like that.
Well, and the jury's out really as to should you play them all together? Sometimes we do, sometimes like in this program we break them up with songs. And if the audience have stayed with you on the journey, this one is like a great release, and then you're going to go back to the true tears in the next one and round off the cycle.
Yeah. Okay, well, I went back to Lindores Abbey again for this one because they also very nicely gifted me another whiskey, and I wanted to share a different story that I thought was quite nice about. So I'll talk about the whiskey first. So this is going to be the strongest whiskey we're going to drink. So I think the others were between 42 and 46%, but this one is 47.2. And actually it's fully sherry matured. So it's completely been matured in sherry, but 4 different sherries. So Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez, Amontillado,
Apologies
and
for
Palo
the bad
Cortada.
pronunciation
So
of
it's
Spanish
incredibly
sherry.
dark, as you can see, and I think we're going to definitely get some very rich notes in there.
We are drinking Lindores Abbey.
Try and show it to the camera. Yes, and have a glass of water. I think that's a good idea. And I think the other thing that obviously I was trying to see if there was any links between Dowland and Lindores Abbey, but I think it's Lindores Abbey was around at the time before the Reformation, and Dowland was born a little bit after. But I did find one really interesting story that the distillery and historians at the Abbey themselves have told me about, which is, I think, one of the last Benedictine monks there actually. When they basically, when the Abbey was destroyed and everyone left, he was the one who saved the music from the Abbey, and he took it with him to St Andrews. So if it hadn't been for him, a lot of music from that early time would have been lost, everything from secular and canticles and all kinds of stuff. And he took it with him to St Andrews and created what's called the Wood Psalter. So it's a collection of manuscripts of music of the time. And the one little link of that is that manuscript or series of music, that the kind of psalter that was made, was continued after he created it. And some of Dowland's music, including some of the Lachrimaes, were included in that psalter.
I'm going to have to go and look that up because I had no idea.
I think there's a particular website they showed me where it talks about some of the manuscripts. But just so lovely that I think if it had not been for him understanding how important was music, like when Lindores was destroyed, there was just no interest. So I thought that was a fascinating story. So as I say, this will be, I think, quite a different whiskey again, but it has a lot more sweet notes coming through it, as you can imagine, with sherries being involved, but with so many different ones, I think it's also got a lot of depth again. So let's go to our final little glass. And as I already noticed, much darker colour. The legs, I think they're fairly sturdy. It kind of creates a little lines all round, but yeah. So do you want to have a little sniff?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's complex.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm getting the sherry.
Yeah, no, I think you really do, yes. Yeah. I think, for me, I suppose I'm thinking of treacle and other things like that when I'm smelling it.
And this is perfect for Dowland because it's great English composer and all that, but who's really made up of all those European influences.
Yes, that's right.
And I can sort of imagine that's here, even though it's a remote, a remote distillery. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now I'm getting the treacle tart.
It's actually quite different from the other two, I think, this one.
Yeah.
I think with so much, if it's completely matured in those sherry casks, it's very warming, but you've just got that overall rounded sweetness that comes with it, while the others were, I suppose, slightly more tart in a way. And this one still has a lot of depth. It's very warming. It's got a long finish, but yeah, I'd say much more, baked.
And that now I'm afraid I'm going to have to plug the whole Lachrimae cycle.
Yes, go on. Yes, please,
this is that moment where you've had forced tears, you've had new old tears, you've had, really sort of dark, angry tears, and now this 6 and 7 you're coming to the truth of love and sweetness, and whether it's a religious message or just a kind of philosophical. At this point in my life, I can, think about things and have pleasure in unexpected beauty that comes along. But I think you have to earn it by the kind of angry pavans before. How interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, well, thank you so much for indulging me this morning for this. And actually, I probably will at this point, as well as thanking you very much for coming on here, I want to thank the 3 kind of whiskey distilleries that did gift me some whiskey to put on the road. So we had Ludlow whiskey, which I chose partly because of it having that local connection to the Three Choirs Festival and being in the local region for Gloucester, Hereford and Worcester. I just thought it would be wonderful to have that. And Sean was very lovely to send me quite a few of his to choose from to pick for the music that I had this week. And then also Lindores Abbey, so they're a lowland whiskey near Fife. And then also, not featured today because I felt it was a bit too meaty for the music involved, but there's also another distillery called Ben Romach, which is in Speyside near Elgin and Inverness, but across the ones that I'm doing. So I'm very thankful to all of them for gifting the whiskey.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope you go away maybe wanting to try a few more of these.
Absolutely, perhaps without the deadline of a concert.
Yes, I was going to say, thank you so much for putting this in
on the other end of the
yes.
concert. But it's given me so many wonderful ideas.
Yes.
And also people, I know music is a bit similar. People say, I don't know how to describe what I'm hearing if you're not a musician.
Yes.
I feel the same way about, taste and picking out different things. So thank you for giving me some language.
Yeah.
To identify what I'm experiencing.
Yes. Well, have a great rest of the day and I look forward to the concert later.
Thank you.
You're listening to Whisky High Notes. Please like, share, subscribe today. Please drink and listen to classical music responsibly.